Recently, Western video games have developed this weird habit where they keep uglifying their female characters. I mean, look at Aloy, Vess, or MJ. At this point, it feels like almost every major Western studio is doing some version of it. Meanwhile, the East has always gone in completely opposite direction. They gave us 2B, Tifa, Bayonetta, Eve, and basically the entire female roster of Marvel rivals. One side understands that people like beautiful characters, the other seems almost offended by the idea. And these characters do not just spawn into the game looking like this by accident. Someone designed them, changed their features, approved the final model, and decided that this was how the character should look. Just look at the actress behind Vess and then look at Kay herself. You cannot seriously tell me that nobody made a choice there. She is a beautiful actress and somehow the final character looks like a plain and ugly version of her. The same thing happened with Aloy. She already looked pretty rough in Horizon Zero Dawn, but then Forbidden West made her face even broader and noticeably less attractive. And MJ might be the most obvious example because we can directly compare her between two games. She looked completely fine in the first Spider-Man, then Spider-Man 2 came out and suddenly she looks older, harsher, and barely even resembles the same character. And this was not some technical limitation. Spider-Man 2 had better technology, a bigger budget, and years of development behind it. They chose to make her look like that. When you see the same thing happening in games from completely different studios, it becomes harder to believe that it's all just a coincidence. I guess the excuse is supposed to be realism. Western developers want their characters to look grounded, while Eastern developers are far more comfortable just making their characters beautiful. But why? Video games are a fantasy, they are escapism. The entire point is that they can show us things that are more interesting than a normal life. If I wanted realism, I would just go outside and play with sticks. I do not boot up a video game because I want the most ordinary version of reality recreated on my screen, and making a fictional woman less attractive does not suddenly make her more realistic or better written. It just makes her less attractive. At some point you have to wonder whether Western developers simply do not want beautiful women in their games anymore. And I think the big part of it is that Western studios have started treating female beauty like it's somehow a problem. If a woman is too attractive, suddenly the character is unrealistic. If she's feminine or sexualized, people assume she was made only for the male gaze, and if players actually like the design, that somehow makes it even more suspicious. But I never understood why being beautiful would make a character worse. Tifa is beautiful, but that does not stop her from being one of the most loved characters in Final Fantasy. 2B is obviously designed to be attractive, yet people still care about her story. Bayonetta is completely over the top, and that confidence is exactly why her design works. These characters are not popular despite being attractive. Their appearance is part of why people remember them. Meanwhile, Western studios sometimes act like making a woman plain automatically gives her depth, as if a wider jaw and less flattering face somehow means better writing. It does not. An ugly character can still be badly written, and a beautiful character can still have personality, flaws, and an interesting story. The design and the writing are not fighting each other. And this is where Eastern developers seem to understand their audience much better. They're not embarrassed by beauty. They make characters that are attractive, stylish, and instantly recognizable because they know visual appeal matters in a visual medium. Marvel Rivals is probably the funniest recent example. Basically every female character in that game looks amazing and people clearly love it. The designs are exaggerated, the proportions are unrealistic, and nobody cares because the game is not pretending to be real life. It is a superhero game. The characters are supposed to look larger than life. Western studios used to understand this too, but now it feels like they're scared that making a woman attractive will somehow make the game look immature. And honestly, I think the opposite is true. There is nothing mature about deliberately making a character less appealing and then pretending it was done for realism. It just feels insecure. And that's why the whole stellar blade discourse felt so weird to me. Eve was hot and apologetically attractive, and people got mad over it. Now the same thing is happening again with Evie in the sequel. Some people in the West are complaining that she looks too young. And to me, it just feels like another backlash against female character who was deliberately designed to be attractive. Are we really at the point where making a woman beautiful causes controversy, but making her plain and ugly is seen as the safe and mature direction? Because that honestly seems to be where Western gaming is heading. And before somebody tells me in the comments that Western games still have attractive female characters, yeah, obviously, Shadowheart is hot as fuck. And if you think Shadowheart is hot, now you have to subscribe. Anyway, I'm not saying every woman in every Western game is ugly. I am talking about a clear trend, and Ubisoft just gave us another example with Annie in Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced. She looked great in the original, and somehow the new version made her noticeably less attractive. This is an existing character. Ubisoft already had the design, and instead of simply updating it with modern graphics, they changed her in the exact same direction we have been talking throughout this video. And this is where the realism argument completely falls apart for me. Just look at the actress behind Vess. She is an actual real woman. She is beautiful, yet Kay still ends up looking like a plain and ugly version of her, and somehow that is supposed to be a more realistic option. Meanwhile, Eve's body was literally scanned from a real model, but Shift Up did not use that scan just to make her less attractive afterwards. They leaned into her beauty and made it a part of the character. So clearly the technology is not a problem, it comes down to what the studio actually wants the final character to look like. And I think this is the part Western studios either do not understand or simply do not want to admit. Character design matters. Before we know anything about the story, the writing, or the personality of the characters, the first thing we see is the character. A strong design can make people interested in a game instantly. A bland or ugly one can do the exact opposite. That does not mean an attractive character automatically makes a game good, but pretending appearance does not matter in a visual medium is just dishonest. Stellar Blade understood this perfectly. Eve's design got people talking about the game before most of them even knew how the combat worked. And instead of seeing that as something valuable, Western studios often treat that kind of appeal like it's beneath them. They seem more worried about whether a female character looks too attractive than whether she actually looks memorable. And that is how you end up with technically impressive characters that nobody really cares about once the game disappears from the front page. And I think this is where the real difference between Western and Eastern studios start to show. Eastern developers still seem to ask how they can make a character appealing. Western developers increasingly seem to ask how can they make a design that nobody can criticize. Once beauty becomes something risky, the safest option is to tone it down and call the result grounded. Then if players say the character looks bad, the discussion immediately turns into realism instead of the actual design. I do not think there is some secret plan to make women ugly. It is probably just an industry where developers have learned that attractive female character can create backlash, while an unattractive one is rarely treated as a problem. And over time, that fear starts shaping the art. Characters stop feeling like they're designed to excite the audience and start to feel like they were designed to survive an argument on Twitter. That is probably why so many Western female characters feel forgettable now. The developers are so worried about making them too attractive that they forget to make them appealing at all. And honestly, this gives me the same feeling I get from a lot of modern Western studios. They do not really understand gamers anymore. Their audience is not the loudest person on Twitter waiting to get offended by a character design. It is mostly normal people living their everyday lives who just want to come home, relax and play something fun. But instead of designing games for those people, studios keep catering to the small group that complains the loudest. And that is how you end up with characters nobody asked for, made to please an audience that probably was not going to buy the game anyway. Meanwhile, the actual players are sitting there wondering why every design decision feels like it was made for someone else. And the weirdest part is that this is exclusively a Western problem. Japanese and Korean studios do not seem embarrassed by their audience. They know what their players like, and they are completely comfortable giving it to them. Western studios, on the other hand, keep listening to the people who seem offended by the very idea of an attractive female character, then they act surprised when gamers get more excited about Eve, Tifa, or the women in Marvel Rivals than another plain protagonist designed to impress Twitter. Anyways, subscribe and love you. Bye!